Hello and welcome to Stupid Ancient History with Midgley
and Taylor and our expert, non-expert and special guest, the amazing James, hegemon of all that is science and wearer of fancy lab coats.
Forgot a new name.
Indeed. As always, we're wearing togas, we're eating olives, and today we're going to look at the rise of Philip II and Macedon.
Right, last time you told me we were talking about Alexander,
Yep.
and now we're talking about Phil.
Well,
Who's Phil?
yeah,
Don't like the cut of his jib.
we are doing Alexander,
Okay.
but in order to understand Alexander's success, it's important to understand what happens in Macedonia at the time.
And what's going on with his dad.
Is this the same Macedonia that's contentious currently? Are we going to hear a lot of geography-based information here?
What, you mean you don't want to hear about the geography of Macedonia?
Not really, no.
Well, okay.
I come to these podcasts for very specific things, as I'm sure our
Everyone else.
3 listeners do.
No, honestly,
But it's not geography.
There's nothing about the geography of Macedonia,
Excellent.
honestly.
Why is he laughing?
Well, you know, the geography of Macedonia is
No.
bit rude.
You alright now, James?
Well, I mean, I've grown up hearing a lot about the woes of Macedonia.
Obviously.
Yeah, are they the same political woes we have now?
No. It's geographical.
There's no new Macedonia at this point.
So you ready to carry on then?
I think I am, yeah.
Are you sure? I
Well,
mean, you're
I've-
not going to end up thumping one of us, are you? You've already done something.
You're out of reach.
Oh, God.
Social distancing. Okay, well, Macedonia was very different to other Greek states, partly because of its location.
So are we still at a point here where we've got Athens,
Yeah.
Sparta? Like, there's no centralised Greek
No,
government.
there is no actual Greece, it's just lots of different Greeks.
People who hate each other, who live near each other.
Yeah, so its
Okay.
geography is quite important.
So Macedonia was significantly larger than most Greek city-states at the time, and it had large flat plains for breeding horses and a lot of natural mineral wealth. So it was quite wealthy.
Okay, so I've not been to Greece, but it's quite hilly, so
Yeah.
that's unusual.
It is, and
that-
quite fertile.
Yeah, does that mean it's desirable? Is this
Well-
war about?
Yeah, I mean, it's
It's
also...
war afoot.
War's always a foot in Greece.
Well,
It's
fair
what
enough.
they do. Anyway, it's also significantly more, should we say, northern than the main Greek states.
Well, they have whippets.
Not that kind of northern, or flat caps, but it's right at the north, and as such, it acts as like a bit of a barrier against all these northern raiding tribes from the Balkans, from Europe, and the steppes.
Okay, so it's not all roses and
No.
flat land and horses.
No, but there's still flat land and horses.
Okay.
So, for hundreds of years, Macedonia had largely been overlooked by the other Greek city-states as kind of wild, bad land.
Like East Manchester.
I'm sorry, but that is just completely inappropriate.
Yeah, no horses in East Manchester.
Parts of East Manchester are very nice, actually. They're not badlands. They're just
Different.
unique.
Anyway, back to Macedonia.
Well, the Macedonians didn't really look or necessarily sound like the other Greeks. Supposedly they were quite fair or ruddy in complexion. I am not ruddy in complexion, before you say anything.
Didn't
So
say that.
there, and
They also like to drink heavily and fight amongst themselves.
I mean,
I really don't want to make the East Manchester joke again, but the evidence is
to be
mounting.
fair, yeah, that bit's similar. And because also it was so far north, Macedonia often acted as a buffer between the Greeks to the south and the raiding tribes from the north.
Right,
So again, like East Manchester people, you know, peacemakers.
What, you keep Yorkshire out?
I put up with Yorkshireman and keep him in line.
Right,
what you
so
mean.
they're like the wrong'uns to the north,
Yeah.
but they have to put up with all these other more wrong'uns.
Yeah.
So, are they happy just to leave them to it?
Well, yeah, I mean, as long as they keep everyone out, no one really cared that much. They were a bit like an unloved draft
So
excluder.
they're a little bit like the Night's Watch in Game of Thrones. They're just like, they're up there, no one really cares much, but they do a job that they all need.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah. And, you know, they are Greeks, but not
Greek.
Greek.
Yeah, and they are wealthy with lots of natural resources.
But a bit wild.
I'm just imagining them like running into the mix when there's a fight brewing and being like, calm down, get back in your box, shut up.
No, they were more likely to start the fight. The other reason the rest of Greece sort of overlooked the Macedonians was due to their alliance with the Persians in the early 5th century.
Right. So I know the Persians.
Yeah.
Where are we up to with them? So
we're going back a bit.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
So in the 490s, before the Battle of Marathon, Macedonia was one of the first Greek states to become subjugated by the Persian king Darius. So the technical term that we use is to say that they were Medized.
Medized.
Okay. And also they helped the next Persian king, Xerxes. Remember that, mad lad?
I do remember him. Sector X.
Yeah. They helped him invade Greece 10 years later in 480 BC.
Right, okay. So they're probably, if they already have this reputation of being like, not very Greek to the Greeks, this probably didn't help things, did it?
Not at all.
Invading the rest of it.
No.
And then you add into this mess, bear in mind Alexander and Philip are about easily 100 years after this. You add into this mess the fact that Macedonian kings had this nasty habit of, well, let's say, if you're lucky, getting killed in battle, but more commonly assassinated.
Killed in battle because they're... You said earlier that Alex led from the front.
Yeah,
is that a him thing or a Macedonian thing?
That's a Macedonian thing, generally.
Right, okay.
But more commonly, they were assassinated.
By the person who next became king?
Yeah, if they were lucky, until they got assassinated. So you've got all this going on. So that's one of the reasons why they don't really have much of an impact on the Greek world until 100 years later.
Because they just keep murdering each other.
Yeah.
Fair enough. So you're giving me like lots of reasons so far why Macedonia wasn't really liked by the Greeks.
Or did anything.
They just murdered themselves and then invaded their own country, sort of. How did they actually become important then? Because it seems like someone needs to like pull their socks up and do some work.
Yeah, well, I mean, the first reason why they eventually become important and becoming less important.
I mean, you can't even believe they could become important. You can't say it.
All of this. No, the first reason is it goes back to this Persian invasion in 480 and 490. So after the Persians have been squarely beaten by the Greeks.
But is this the Hellenic League sort of?
Yeah, the Xerxes, Darius. Once they'd been seen off, the Greeks then thought it'd be a really good idea to go to war with each other.
Obviously. Well, you've said before, like, the only people the Greeks hate more than other people are other Greeks.
Yes. So they go to war with each other.
For the best part of a century, so it's quite a long time.
That's a bit of a scrap.
Yeah. So, and obviously...
They hold a grudge.
Yeah, and they keep holding it. So obviously, early on in the 5th century, Athens and Sparta are the main powers. Once they've seen off the Persians, they divide the rest of Greece basically into two massive alliances and spend, like I said, best part of 100 years scrapping it out with each other in the Peloponnesian Wars.
And even though Macedonia had joined Sparta in those wars, they didn't really do that much to help them.
So is this a joined or like subjugated sort of thing?
Joined.
Right, okay.
Sort of. You've got to pick sides. They pick one side. They just don't do an awful lot. So
is it like straight geographical, like down the...
it's a mess.
Oh, is it?
It's
right,
a
okay.
real mess. So by 404 BC, when the Peloponnesian Wars finally come to an end, Athens and Sparta have basically exhausted and broken themselves through fighting for a century.
Not Macedonia, though. They're still
they just kind of stayed
nice
on the side.
Yeah.
They just stayed on the sidelines.
Yeah, so following the Peloponnesian Wars, Thebes is another Greek city-state. They decide to have a go at extending their power.
But they also pretty much ignore Macedonia as well.
Right, so they've basically done a rope-a-dope. They've let the rest of Greek tire themselves out, and they've just gone, ha-ha, and pounced.
Bingo.
Right, okay.
Clever.
So they're now an entity in Greece.
Yeah.
After doing not a lot, everyone else is knackered. They're now in a position to do stuff.
Yeah.
Is this where Philip becomes a thing?
Absolutely.
Okay. Is his name actually Philip?
His name is Philip.
Is it not a more lovely Greek sound like Philippos or something like that? Is it actually just Philip?
Let's just call him Philip for now.
Right. Phil. So who's Phil?
So, Philip is an equally cunning and ruthless king.
He's also a bit of a brawler.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. He's not the kind of king who'd stand at the back and tell his men what to do. He's very much at the front, starting the scraps, getting involved in the scraps, charging headlong into the enemy.
Yeah, and because he's the youngest of 3 brothers, it was likely in his early years that he would have been overlooked regarding training to be king.
So how did he become king if there were all these people in front of him, dare I ask? Murdered him.
Yeah, pretty
Right,
much.
he murdered
not
them
by
to-
Phil,
Not by Phil.
by others.
Okay, so other people who just wanted them not to be king or wanted Phil to be king?
Just wanted them dead.
Okay,
generally.
fair enough.
But I mean, again, Philip does, however, learn about this kind of cutthroat nature of Greek power and politics when he's held hostage for 3 years in his younger years. So
Right, okay, so he's had a bit of a life.
yeah, it's not been a cushy
Because
upbringing.
obviously, sadly now passed away, but you talked to me about a royal Philip, and I have a certain, particularly being Greek as well,
It's not that Philip.
a certain image comes to mind, and I don't imagine him brawling and...
I
No.
think that this Philip had a much tougher life than that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, we know little bits. We know quite a bit about him, little things like he lost an eye in battle. I just
Alright.
went, I've got another. It's fine.
Fair enough.
He's that kind of guy.
I'm liking him more and more.
So when Philip does come to power, we see he's clearly an ambitious man, and his first step in making Macedonia rise to greatness is to sort out these northern tribes that have been hassling Macedonia, and then start on the Greeks.
How does that go down?
Well, he's got 2 clear approaches. One of them is through marriage, and the other one is through war.
Sex and
Age-
swords, really?
Age old.
Sex and swords.
It's always what you go for.
All these northern tribes,
Yep.
are these just roaming bands of...
No, they've got cities, they've got city-states, but
So, to the Greeks, they're not Greek, so they're...
they're barbarians, so they're wild tribes.
Right, okay.
So if we start with the marriages, Philip uses this primarily as a way of building alliances with these northern states. So he marries the Princess the Princess Audata to secure an alliance with the Illyrians. Then he marries Phila, who was from Elymea, to secure his grip on that part of Macedon.
Okay. He can have more than one wife.
Yeah, he ends up with 7 in total.
What a lad.
It has its problems as well, James.
I'm sure it does. But if you're king...
Yeah.
One a day.
Oh, God.
Oh,
If you just called him... What did you say your name was? Adata.
Monday,
Adata.
Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Your name is now Thursday.
well, no, because his 4th wife, who would be Thursday, is Olympias, who's Alexander's mum. He marries her in 457 to secure an alliance with Epirus, which is another of these northern states.
Does it work?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
But for those who he can't marry into, there's always Plan B.
Whoa!
I'm shocked that's not Plan A, to be fair.
Building up to it. So initially, Philip spends a lot of his time and energy in the north of Greece, taking kind of Athenian settlements from the borders of Macedonia and Thrace, and making sure his borders are secure.
Yeah, and he then turns his attention south, effectively forcing Athens to be an ally and strong-arming others to do the same.
So Athens is now that weak that he can bully them.
Yeah, and
Right, okay.
Macedonia is now that
That's strong. Right, okay.
So he continues in this fashion until he threatens to invade Sparta right in the south, in the Peloponnese. Before invading Sparta, he actually sends them this little message.
If I bring my army into your land, I will destroy your farms, slay your people, and raise your city.
I think he's been a bit subtle there. I don't think they'll get there's a slight hint of a threat to it.
Yeah, but equally, Sparta send him back a reply.
Which is...
If.
If I invade your city.
Very confident,
If I bring my
I
army.
would
Well, I
say.
mean, this is the Spartans. They are notoriously mental.
Yeah,
they
I mean,
don't
the-
say a lot, and they have this reputation of being...
The last time you told me about a messenger coming with a threat, they threw him down a well, didn't they?
Yeah, and yeah. So this doesn't go down very well with Philip, and strong as he is, it seems, however, this one-word classically Spartan reply is enough to stop him invading Sparta at that time.
It worked, fair play to him.
But he's not done yet.
So Philip's now just tactically married or warred his way all around Greece.
Yep.
Is this going somewhere happy for Philip?
Well, subduing Greece is only kind of a means to an end. but it all comes to a bit of a head in 338.
What's the end?
We're getting there.
Okay.
So Thebes, like we said, this other Greek city-state, had stirred up a number of other states who weren't too keen on having a Macedonian, let's say, overlord.
Is this not keen on any overlord, or just because they still see them as being a bit loutish and...
Bit of column A, bit of column B.
Right,
Neither is
okay.
good. So they gather together and they fight the Macedonian army at the Battle of Chaeronea, which is in central Greece.
So supposedly this is one of the first battles that Alexander took part in at the age of 16.
Oh, so he's born. I thought you would have mentioned that.
No. Well, Philip was busy.
Okay, well, yeah, busy making us the greatest leader in the history.
And other stuff. Either way, the Macedonians win and Thebes is razed to the ground and destroyed.
That didn't go well for them, did it? So the entire, it's a big bit of Greece, isn't it?
Yeah.
They're
It was
just
a
gone.
big city-state gone. Burnt.
Right,
Not there
okay.
anymore.
So he's finished doing that, and then the following year Philip marches south to Corinth.
Which is ultimately what he wanted. He's a bit closer to Sparta. But this is what he wants.
Yeah, so whilst he's there, he meets with leaders of most Greek states, and they make him hegemon of the League of Corinth.
What is that?
So basically, this now means that Philip is the supreme military commander of all the armies of Greece. This is quite typical of him. He's not interested in how they govern themselves or what laws they do. He just wants their armies.
Why?
Because his ultimate goal is to invade Persia.
Oh, I thought he was best mates for them.
Nope.
All right, fair enough.
So the key things here, we've got two really important kind of building blocks that add to the story of Alexander the Great. It's the context as much as anything.
Yeah, so your first one is like the rise of Macedon, so it's a bit of a sleeping giant.
Yeah.
And it kind of is being quite clever, you could say, because no one really sees it, no one really is that bothered about it. It's largely ignored. People don't see it as a threat, they're just like, whatever. But then because of that, it's used to their advantage, and they're able to kind of pit people off against each other and become more and more powerful.
Yeah, and they don't spend
As it goes
100 years making each other weaker, which is
Always a good thing.
Just out of curiosity, who won?
the Peloponnesian Wars,
Yeah.
Sparta, for a year.
For a year,
Yeah.
okay.
Didn't go well.
Well, there's also the fact that they've got a lot of natural resources. They've got a lot of natural wealth.
Yeah.
So if
Gold
they just
mines, silver mines.
yeah, if they just wait for everyone else to kind of finish fighting themselves and just wear themselves out and basically lose men on both sides, so they've not got very strong armies anymore, then if they keep their men and they can then go in, can't they? And they've got the manpower, but they've also got the finances and the resources.
Yeah, because
to
if,
be able
if
to
you're
back
going to
it
go
up.
on to be this great conqueror that Alexander does, it helps if you come from a wealthy state with lots of resources rather than someone's back garden.
If they were looked at as these kind of lesser Greeks and they had all this lovely flatland and
Yeah.
precious metals, why did no one invade them and take it off them?
Because it was just too much effort.
Right, okay.
But also it's to do with the Greek mindset. So there's lots of things that we'll look at in the next episode. Things like cavalry didn't play a massive part in Greek
Because
warfare.
it's so hilly.
Because what were they going to go to war on? Goats.
Yeah.
You know? So Macedon's really important, but then also it helps that you've got this king who comes along and he's able to do something with it. With Philip II, he's ambitious, he's cunning, he's ruthless, he's hard to assassinate.
I was about to ask, with this conga line of murder that they seem to have with the kings, is no one trying to kill Philip? Or is he reasonably well liked?
Well, lots of people are trying to kill him. He's just better at killing them. It's kind of what they're trying to do in these battles. But yeah, he's ambitious, he's cunning, he's ruthless. And it's important that he basically does a lot of the legwork before Alexander can become king. So it's not like Alexander inherits a state that's in complete chaos like Philip does. He inherits a relatively stable, it's Greece, relatively stable, powerful nation already.
This might be jumping ahead here. If he's got 7 wives, does he just have Alexander or are there other children in the
There are
mix?
other siblings.
Okay, I can guess what happens to them.
So there you have it, our brief introduction to Macedonia and the rise of Philip II. Thank you for listening. We hope this has been helpful. Leave us a comment below, and until next time, goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.